Brain Rules presents the latest findings about the brain in a compelling and easy-to-understand manner. The book is organized into 12 sections that each deal with a different aspect of the subject. Number 1, survival. Number 2, exercise. Number 3, sleep. Number 4, stress. 5, wiring. 6, attention. Number 7, memory. Number 8, sensory integration. Number 9, vision. 10, music. 11, gender. And number 12, exploration. Based on the science behind each rule, the author, John Medina, describes novel ideas which could help improve our health, performance, and general experience at home, the workplace, and in the classroom. This New York Times best-selling book combines research in a variety of different fields, including biology, experimental psychology, cognitive neuroscience, and evolutionary biology. The findings presented are rigorously tested and backed by peer-reviewed journals. Brain Rules was designed to help educators, parents, business people, anybody benefit from advances in brain science that they otherwise might not have access to. So here's what you'll learn about in this book summary: how sleep, exercise, and stress affect our bodies and thinking, the importance of enlisting the power of our senses and repetition to improve retention, how structuring information aids in its assimilation, and the key role played by exploration in helping us reach our full cognitive potential. A tweetable summary to summarize this book in a nutshell: leverage the results of rigorous studies about topics such as exercise and memory to improve your cognitive abilities and general health. A few crucial quotes before we dive into the big ideas. Quote, "Is there one factor that predicts how well you will age? It was never an easy question for researchers to answer. They found many variables from nature to nurture that contributed to someone's ability to age gracefully. That's why the scientific community met with both applause and suspicion, a group of researchers who uncovered a powerful environmental influence. One of the greatest predictors of successful aging was the presence or absence of a sedentary lifestyle." Quote, "The brain acts like a muscle. The more activity you do, the larger and more complex it can become. Whether that leads to more intelligence is another issue, but one fact is indisputable. What you do in life physically changes what your brain looks like. You can wire and rewire yourself with a simple choice of which musical instrument or professional sport you play." And the final crucial quote: "If you wanted to create an education environment that was directly opposed to what the brain was good at doing, you probably would design something like a classroom. If you wanted to create a business environment that was directly opposed to what the brain was good at doing, you probably would design something like a cubicle. And if you wanted to change things, you might have to tear down both and start over." Big idea number 1, exercise to improve your mental performance. In the book, Medina tells us that our direct ancestors were constantly crossing rivers and deserts and jungles and mountain ranges, all without the aid of maps and mostly without tools. Given our relative wimpiness, as he tells us in the animal kingdom, we don't even have enough body hair to survive a mildly chilly night. What these data tell us is that we grew up in top physical shape, or we didn't grow up at all. And they also tell us the human brain became the most powerful in the world under conditions where motion was a constant presence. Now, our evolutionary history points to the importance of regular exercise for the proper functioning of our brain as well as our general health. Research shows, that's cited in the book, that those who have prioritized a lifetime of regular exercise outperform people with a sedentary lifestyle in tests that assess, among other things, reaction times, quantitative skills, and executive function. These are the core areas of succeeding in the knowledge and idea economy that we currently live in. Your executive function deals with details and your ability to plan and set goals and things of that nature. And of course, reaction times, you should be pretty on point with that regardless of what economy you're living in or which area of life you're dealing with. And thankfully, with as little as 4 months though, if any of those areas for you are low or if you're not exercising, you don't feel the energy and the brain power that you feel like you should, well, with as little as 4 months of regular exercise, you can significantly increase all of those areas in their sharpness. The key benefit that exercise provides is an improvement of cardiovascular health. It stimulates the growth of blood vessels, which results in more efficient transportation of vital nutrients and waste, which in turn facilitates all of your biological processes, including the ones occurring in your brain. In addition, exercise stimulates something called BDNF, which is a protein that encourages neurogenesis, the growth of new neurons in your brain. Aerobic exercise for just 30 minutes, 2 to 3 times a week, is sufficient to derive these benefits, this increase in brain power, this increase in reaction time, quantitative skill, executive function, all of these things by just exercising a few times a week for 30 minutes? Come on. That's beautiful. If you're not already doing so, you definitely should pick up that habit. In fact, just 20 minutes of walking every day cuts the risk of stroke by half. Big idea number 2, leverage sleep to boost your thinking. Quote, "The bottom line is that sleep loss means mind loss. Sleep loss cripples thinking in just about every way you can measure thinking. Sleep loss hurts attention, executive function, immediate memory, working memory, mood, quantitative skills, logical reasoning ability, general math knowledge. Eventually, sleep loss affects manual dexterity, including fine motor control, and even gross motor movement, such as the ability to walk on a treadmill. When you look at the data combined, a consistency emerges. Sleep is rather intimately involved in learning. It is observable with large amounts of sleep. It is observable with small amounts of sleep. It is observable all the time." Unquote. Your brain is 80% more active during sleep than during waking hours. In fact, the sleep process itself is regulated by the interaction between the S system, which keeps us asleep and makes us sleepy, and the C system, which keeps us awake. You can kind of think of it as an ongoing battle between these two systems. C soldiers keep you awake, and S soldiers make you sleepy. And this just goes on throughout our lifetimes, over and over and over again. When you're awake and when you're focused, your C system is winning the battle. When you're asleep or when you're getting sleepy, your S system is winning the battle. Now, the fact that for most of our biological evolution, sleeping at night actually makes us vulnerable or has made us vulnerable to potential attacks. Imagine your early ancestors falling asleep afraid they might get woken up by a saber-toothed tiger. And yet, the fact that we also have evolved to need so many hours of it implies that it must be of incredible importance. Now, while we sleep, our minds go over things that we have learned during the day. And disrupting this process in rats has actually been shown to result in difficulties with recall of the material the following day. Along the same lines, sleeping on a problem has been shown to improve our ability to solve it. Now, about 10% of people are known as owls, which is to say their biological drive to sleep kicks in later than for most people. And on the other end, Another 10% are known as larks, and they need to sleep earlier in the day than the general population. The rest of us are known as hummingbirds. Additionally, sleep and our needs, our individual needs, vary according to other factors such as gender and age. So the key lesson, the actionable insight here is abiding by your own personal predisposition for sleep can help boost your own mental performance during your waking hours. Aside from the dramatic effect that sleep has on your brain, it also influences other important bodily functions as well. For instance, lack of sleep increases the level of stress hormones and makes assimilation of the food we eat dramatically less efficient as well. In fact, the food that we eat when we don't get enough sleep, when we do eat the following day, that assimilation, the digestion process, and our body's ability to metabolize the food and convert it into energy, that process goes down by a full 2/3. So the key lesson, get more sleep. If you don't know whether you're a lark or an owl or a hummingbird, like the majority of people, figure it out. When do you operate best? Do you operate best early in the morning? Or do you operate best as an owl later at night? Or are you somewhere in the middle between those two? Identify that personal predisposition to sleep that you have and tap into it and make a habit of abiding by it. Big idea number 3, manage chronic stress and the emotional stability of your relationships for optimal performance. Quote, imagine growing up in an emotionally unstable home where the stress seems never-ending. Given that stress can powerfully affect learning, one might predict that children living in high-anxiety households would not perform as well academically as kids living in more nurturing households. That's exactly what researchers have found. Marital stress at home can negatively affect academic performance in almost every way measurable and at nearly any age, unquote. Now, all stress is not bad. Chronic stress deregulates important processes in the body. Now, we are not evolutionarily adapted for stress that lasts longer than 30 seconds either. And when faced with a threat, the body releases the hormones adrenaline and cortisol. These enable us to manage fight or flight scenarios, but prolonged exposure to them is incredibly harmful. Adrenaline scars blood vessels, and cortisol hurts the hippocampus, the part of the brain that controls memory. Stress also damages motor skills and executive function. It weakens the immune system, disrupts sleep, and can lead to depression. A critical source of stress is domestic strife. This point is of particular importance as disharmony in the home has actually been shown to be one of the greatest predictors of poor academic performance and poor brain performance, generally speaking, as a whole. Marriage intervention of the type designed by marriage researcher John M. Gottman can actually go a long ways towards improving your relationships and heating off any conflict that may currently exist within them. In one study, Gottman's method, which focuses on reducing hostile interactions between partners, practically halved divorce rates. This is especially crucial for couples expecting their first child, as new parents find that satisfaction in their relationship actually decreases by 70% within the first year of parenthood. Gottman's intervention, when applied to expectant parents, made a marked difference in the behavioral and emotional development of the babies. So bottom line, actionable insight, if you have conflict in your relationships, especially with your loved ones, figure out how to resolve them. Confront them, talk about them, air them out, and you will experience a marked improvement in your brain performance, your attention, your focus. Everything else gets better when you decrease the amount of stress, especially with regard to your relationships in your life. Big idea number 4, structure information in a way that promotes learning. Quote, Emotional arousal helps the brain learn. Audiences check out after 10 minutes, but you can keep grabbing them back by telling narratives or creating events rich in emotion." Unquote. The brain has evolved to pay particular attention to stimuli that relate to sex, food, and danger. Additionally, emotional arousal helps it retain information. So, to improve your lectures and talks, consider these points in coordination with findings that suggest that the brain stops paying attention to new information at the 10-minute mark. For example, if you regularly deliver presentations, structure them so that they come in under 10 minutes or inject new, stimulating material to recapture your audience's attention before it's likely to stray, like injecting a relevant joke to shake things up and capture their attention. Experts structure information about their topic differently than other people do. An expert organizes their details around the big ideas or the gist of the concept that they're teaching about or presenting about. And the most effective learning method is then to focus on the core concepts of the material and then fill in the minutia later. Switching gears, despite what popular culture might tell us, the brain is not in fact able to multitask. When we do more than one thing at once, such as driving and texting at the same time, there's a lag because the brain switches focus from one activity to the other and then back again. So theoretically, there is no such thing as multitasking. There's only switching tasks really, really quickly between one another. And people think that that's what multitasking is. Now, this sequential processing means that any task done while engaged in another activity will be completed in an inefficient and potentially dangerous way because you're trying to do two things at once, but really what you're doing is switching between two things very quickly. For instance, if you think about driving and texting, you're texting with your phone and then looking at the road, texting with your phone and looking at the road. It's impossible to do both things at the same time, drive and text, at optimal levels. Because really what you're doing is switching back and forth, back and forth, back and forth as quickly as you possibly can to maintain a text message and your safety on the road while you're driving. And this is comparable to drinking and driving. Now, although the repercussions are not as grave, working while online has a similar effect on the brain's performance and increases the error rate significantly. Big idea number 5. Leverage the power of the senses to improve retention. Quote, "The groups in the multisensory environments always do better than the groups in the unisensory environments. They have more accurate recall. Their recall has better resolution and lasts longer, evident even 20 years later." Unquote. While vision is the most powerful sense when it comes to our brain, deploying our other senses in a coordinated fashion has been found to boost learning and improve marketing results as well. Studies have shown that the brain integrates different sensory inputs when processing impressions. For instance, the McGurk effect is a perceptual phenomenon that takes place when the subject is exposed to a visual component of a sound being spoken and an actual sound that is slightly different. What the subject then perceives is a sound different than either of the original two sounds. Seeing how closely our senses work together, it's logical then that multisensory environments boost learning dramatically. While it's common to focus on the auditory and visual components of an experience, experiments that have added a third sense to the mix have actually shown how effective that can be for memorization. People are able to remember 10 to 50% more of a movie while they're exposed to the smell of popcorn, believe it or not. And smell has important implications when it comes to businesses, but only if they are congruent. For instance, one department store found that scenting the air of its women's section with vanilla a smell known to be particularly pleasing to the female nose, actually helped boost sales. But when the same thing, that same vanilla scent, was done in the men's section, sales actually went down. So the context and congruence is very important. Nonetheless, no single sense has more impact than sight. Studies have shown that we remember only 10% of a plain text compared to 65% when it comes to a text that is accompanied by a picture. This is why PowerPoint presentations, which are text-based, are inefficient and should be abandoned in favor of picture-based modalities. Big idea number 6, repeat to consolidate memories. Quote, is there any hope of creating a reliable long-term memory? As the brain rule here suggests, the answer is yes. Memory may not be fixed at the moment of learning, but repetition doled out in specifically timed out intervals is the fixative. Unquote. When they're first being formed, memories are detailed in nature, incredibly detailed. They are also somewhat malleable and lack the solidity of a well-established recollection. Over time, the brain subjects them to a reconstructive process by which it applies a certain amount of guesswork to filling in the gaps where information has been forgotten. It also makes use of unrelated memories for this purpose as well. One particular study, to illustrate, recorded childhood memories at 2 different points in a person's life, once in adolescence and the second time in adulthood. The recollected events were vastly different at these 2 different points, even though they were ostensibly the same memory. Repetition plays a major role in fixing memories for long-term use, but not just any kind. Not just any kind of memory will do. One of the most effective ways is elaborative rehearsal, where you think and talk about an event immediately after it's taken place. A researcher named Ebbinghaus has shown that there is a significant memory loss in the first 2 hours after an event, and that it can be counteracted by doing this elaborative rehearsal. So, in other words, when you learn something, talk about it, explain it, think about it, apply it to your own life, rather than just learning it and then allowing yourself to automatically digest it. The best way to really and truly learn it is to practice this elaborative rehearsal where you think about the concept, talk about the concept, maybe find somebody to teach it to. And when carried out in fixed, spaced time intervals, this kind of repetition forms the most powerful way to retain information over the long term. In fact, in one experiment, students who used spaced time intervals to memorize a list of words performed significantly better than a second group that used a cramming style of repetition. However, despite the requirements set forth by formal education, it takes years for a memory to really be consolidated by your brain. Big idea number 7. Listen to music to boost your cognition. Quote, formal musical training improves intellectual skills in several cognitive domains. Music boosts spatial, temporal skills, vocabulary, picking out sounds in a noisy environment, working memory, and sensory motor skills. Unquote. Now, contrary to popular belief, music training does not particularly improve cognitive skills such as reading ability or the ones assessed by IQ tests. The Mozart effect, for instance, has actually been debunked. However, it does have other valuable effects. Musicians have, among others, better listening abilities, language skills, vocabularies, working memories, and motor skills. Music has beneficial effects on speech because there is an overlap between the brain regions that process music and speech. Additionally, music training improves social skills. The level of cooperation required between band members develops their ability to detect subtle social cues and emotion. In fact, One study of school children who took music lessons for a year found that it had improved their empathy. It even increased their ability to mimic facial expressions. These types of improvements have been found in subjects of all ages. The social abilities of babies actually increased more when they actively participated in making music, for instance, beating on a drum, rather than just listening to it. However, listening to music also has plenty of benefits. A principal effect is that music changes hormonal levels, particularly in relation to dopamine, which then acts to change the listener's behavior. For instance, one study found that patients who had been instructed to listen to music before their surgery experienced 13% lower stress than those who had taken an anti-stress pill. Oxytocin, also known as the love hormone, has been shown to increase when people play music together, and its calming effect can also be detected in listeners. Now, the success of music therapy in improving language skills and motor skills points to the powerful impact playing an instrument and singing can actually have on your brain. Numerous studies have shown it to be more beneficial than talk therapy as well. Listening to music has also been shown to have potent benefits, namely in speeding up the recovery process of neonatal babies. Now, how can you apply music therapy to your own life? Well, you could listen to music to jack yourself up before the gym if you're going to work out, or if you're about to go and exercise or go for a run. You might take your music with you and listen to it if you don't already, or even on the way to going. If you are with a loved one, listen to some calming music to boost those oxytocin levels. If you are a parent and you want to boost your child's social skills for the future and you want to set the stage for that, then allow them to play with different instruments like a little drum or some maracas or the piano, and just let them bang it out and just play with it and make their own music, even if it doesn't sound very good since they're just babies. But allowing them to make it rather than just listen to it all the time can really have some awesome outcomes in terms of their social skills in the future. Big idea number 8. Give in to your natural inclination to explore. Quote, "Our learning abilities don't have to change as we age. We can remain lifelong learners. There may have been strong evolutionary pressure for maintaining these strategies. Problem solving was greatly favored in the unstable environment of the Serengeti, but not just any kind of problem solving. When we came down from the trees to the savannah, we didn't say to ourselves, 'Good Lord, give me a book and a lecture and a board of directors so I can spend 10 years learning how to survive in this place.' Our survival did not depend upon exposing ourselves to organized, pre-planned packets of information. Our survival depended upon chaotic, reactive, information-gathering experiences. That's why one of our best attributes is the ability to learn through a series of increasingly self-corrected ideas." Unquote. While scientists used to think that baby brains were blank slates, today it's believed that they come with certain presets that enable their development and that studying them can provide valuable insight into how we learn. Much like the scientists who study them, babies learn by testing increasingly refined hypotheses. The tendency to push limits that is characteristic of the terrible twos phase of toddlers' development is an example of this learning process at work. As adults, the process of forming and testing hypotheses remains a potent learning method. Within the past 10 years, scientists have discovered that parts of the adult brain retain the plasticity of a baby's brain. Unfortunately, by the time we have reached adulthood, our natural curiosity has often been extinguished by the overemphasis on external validation that many schools promote. Medina claims this desire for exploration can help the success of both individuals and businesses. For example, Google has instituted a rule allowing employees to spend 20% of their time on exploring their own interests. This policy clearly paid off, as 50% of new products are actually a result of these forays. Closing notes. The key takeaway from brain rules is this: deliberate changes that are based on scientific findings and target the way we sleep, move, learn, and relate to each other can improve our cognitive skills and retention in schools, at home, and at work. Actionable insights? Do some aerobic exercise for 30 minutes 2 to 3 times a week to experience the protective and brain-boosting benefits of physical movement. Next, for increased efficiency while learning, focus on just the big idea first, then fill in the details around the big ideas. And finally, nap for 30 minutes in the afternoon around 3 p.m. A NASA study found that just 26 minutes of sleep significantly reduced awareness lapses. Even if you don't manage to get some sleep then, avoid scheduling important meetings around that time, because it's around 3 p.m. that our natural inclination to get drowsy and fall asleep